You are one of God's people, preaches St. Ambrose on this feast of St. Lucy. One of the Church. In particular, you are one of the virgins who enhance the grace of your body by the splendor of your soul. Alas, the splendor of the body renders dull that of the soul, and it becomes the center of attention. Little Lucy was a damsel of the Lord, born of a noble family, and therefore presumably already in an arranged marriage. But she persuaded her mother to give what was due for her dowry to the poor, which didn't particularly amuse her fiancé, who then put her to the test. He was going to have other means, but they did not work. When they wanted to attain to her purity, her body was made miraculously heavy and couldn't be moved. There is that tradition also that amongst the torments of the damsel was the gouging out of her eyes, which would explain her popularity to this day with regard to illness in the eyes. We have not far from here at Athboy in a field the old well of St. Lucy, and it is reported that healing still happens there to this day. She also had a serious gash in her throat. Eventually she was able to receive viaticum before she petered out in the Lord. But in her own life there was a link with another earlier martyr, also of Sicily. She went to Catania to venerate her, St. Agatha. Now it would seem that she had already been martyred, presumably during the earlier persecution of Decius around 258, but she appeared to the younger Lucy and said that as Catania was under her protection, so Syracuse would be honored by the Lord because of her. And so it is to this day. It is very popular. But strangely enough, as in the case of St. Mark of Alexandria, disciple of St. Peter, we have this veneration in Venice. Her body is there at Santa Lucia, the large, beautiful church that one sees as one crosses the Grand Canal, coming into Venice from the principal entrance. She reminds us of what we can do with our body. And she also reminds us of the strength of the weaker sex. She withstood. Alas, girls nowadays do not realize what they're doing when they give away easily their virginity. But also the question of the eyes in general should be looked at on this day. Where do we park our eyes? There are many good Christians who do not realize that long hours on screens is bound to be also a portal to impurity if they're not very careful. What enters in stays in and wreaks havoc because the devil plays on it and uses the imagination to influence the will. And those who might not have difficulties in that particular area might find suddenly that they do, that they can't easily wriggle them off. Old Nick knows how to hit hard, and even to destroy good vocations by this pest of the imagination. St. Teresa of Avila used to call the imagination the mad woman of the house. In student days in Rome before ordination, when living in the Norbertine College there was a bit of a stir because the Archbishop of Catania, no less, wanted a complete foundation of premonstratensians made in a house and church and terrain that he had prepared for them, and was sending his best students to us after their ordination, to have a period of formation in Rome, in our house, a good liturgical formation, while doing further studies. He asked the order if he could have a complete group of already formed brethren. But alas, he asked for too much. He asked for 10, and the order couldn't give at that time 10 just in one go, and so nothing actually happened. But it was a movement, and we were listening to what was going on with great interest. I could have got involved, but in a way it's probably better it didn't happen, because it's not easy to have a foundation in Sicily. We know why. However, we had a lot to do with Sicilians, because at St. Antimo, where eventually I was ordained, we had this huge number of young people coming all the time, especially at certain seasons. Scouts, it was a centre of the Scout movement, and the difference was clear, because one had experience of confessing all these Scouts, and those who came from Sicily were much more straightforward than those who came from, say, Milan, far less intellectual and sophisticated. They just wanted confession, and they got to the point and left it, whereas the others might need a long discussion, different mentality. But there was a beauty about the simplicity of the south of Italy, and the faith is still there, very popular, very much based also on popular devotions. They're like processions, for instance, and these feasts, like St. Lucia, would be a mega colour. Of course, the interesting is you might get a contingent of very pious mafiosi in the midst. In the midst of all this, however, I was interested to observe in Rome the difference between the characters of these different forms of Italianate temperament, because I was living opposite the phone there in the Norbertine house and often had to answer it. And when it came to a Sunday afternoon, for instance, quite often they would phone their families, those who were from other parts not too far away, that is Sicily, Italy. Those parts there, they would phone a lot because the family was very important. And one would see the difference in temperament between those, for instance, phoning home to Sicily and those who might be phoning home somewhere else. The Irish, the English, the Americans were relatively calm. They'd get to the point and they'd not raise their voice too much. But the observation and the actually audible phenomenon of the Sicilian contingent was something else. On the phone, and this is the time way before one could see anyone on the phone. This was just a fixed phone in the kiosk. All the body was at work, as though they could hear better by seeing the arms moving at the end of Sicily. So I thought to myself, there's a lesson here. How much energy do we allow to leak out of our system by not knowing how to converse just with the word? And so I thought to myself, this is something I must take with me, and I did. So, with a twinkle in my eye, I wrote this to our dear friends on the Sicilian branch. Gestures. Why do we talk twice o'er, and heed not once what is not said? Why does the head not know how hands to still, and nerves that dance and bounce to every pulse their sent, as if to show that we are well at home, that we have heard each syllable of sound? Can these not stand upon a moment's peace, and let a word come in and go without a pushing hand? Untempered South, whose mouthed truths beat all, soul with soul, made louder, made to hear? And is there room in volume for sounds small, or space in moves so large for moving near? Is there a way to live, a way to die, with little sound, but little made awry?